Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. I'm Noam, and this is the first scene of the first part of my new storytelling series. Are you Edgar Allan Poe fans? I am. But here's the thing, the best Edgar Allan Poe story isn't one that he wrote. This particular story takes us all the way back to September 27th, 1849, in the town of Richmond, Virginia. Poe just left Richmond, Virginia to go to Philadelphia to edit a collection of poems by Mrs. Marguerite St. Leon Loud, a minor American poet at the time. Fast forward to a week later, and we are now in Baltimore. It's a rainy day, and it also happens to be election day, which is important for the story. Joseph Walker, an employee at the Baltimore Sun, was walking towards Gunner Hall, a public house which was also set up that day as a pop-up polling location for the election. Just before he gets there, he finds a man lying on the street in a delirious state, in shabby clothes which clearly aren't his own, just lying there in the gutter. This man was barely conscious. He couldn't really move. But as Walker approached him and got closer, he realized who this man was. This was Edgar Allan Poe. Walker asks Poe, "Do you know anyone in Baltimore who could help you and take care of you?" And Poe gives him a name of someone he knew, and Walker decides to write that person a letter. Writing a letter in this kind of state of emergency might not have been the best thing. But anyway, when Walker stumbled upon Edgar Allan Poe, that was the first time anyone had seen Poe ever since he left Richmond several days beforehand. Poe never made it to Philadelphia to finish his editing business. He also never made it back to New York, where he was living at the time. Poe was never to leave Baltimore, where he launched his career in the early 19th century, and he never regained enough consciousness to be able to explain what happened and why was he found lying in the street, mostly unconscious, dirty, in shabby clothes. No one knows. Poe spent his final days wavering between fits of delirium. According to his doctor, Dr. Moran, he was gripped by visual hallucinations, and he kept calling out for someone named Reynolds, who to this day, we don't know who that person is. It's a mystery. Poe's mysterious death, it feels like it could have been taken straight out of one of his novels. Poe was inspired by adventure, and he was fascinated by enigmas, just like the enigma of his own death. But to this day, the circumstances around the mysterious death of Edgar Allan Poe are basically unknown, and there are many, many theories about what ended up killing him. If you're still watching this video, it's probably thanks to the power of storytelling. I mean, yes, it could be because I promoted the hell out of this storytelling series on LinkedIn and every other social media. It could be because of my British accent, which for some reason some people find a little bit charming. It could be because you just ran out of things to watch on Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV Plus. You get the point. But it's probably the story, because stories are a magnificent thing. I believe storytelling is one of the most important skills that anyone can have. And it also happens to be something that most of us heavily underinvest in. This video is the first video in a 3-part series about storytelling. But here's some surprising news. Because there's so much to talk about when it comes to storytelling, each of those 3 parts will have 3 scenes or 3 videos. So this is actually the first scene within the first part. In part 1, we're going to talk about the art and science of storytelling and what makes stories so integral to being human. We'll start with a bit of history, but we'll quickly jump into the characteristics that make up some of the greatest stories. And then we'll learn about how those characteristics align with the ways in which the human brain has evolved. This first part will give us the foundations to craft incredible stories. In part 2, we'll talk about research stories. What does it take to craft crisp and compelling data-driven tales? Finally, in part 3, we'll talk about career stories. How can you tell the story that you know best? Your own story. But wait, there's more. Because when the 3 parts are over, I'm going to host one of the most prominent storytelling experts in Silicon Valley for a conversation, either live or recorded, we haven't decided yet, about storytelling. She's worked with countless individuals and companies, Forbes 500 companies, entrepreneurs, founders, product people, UX people, to help them tell their stories. If you want to level up your storytelling skills, to increase the impact you have in your current role, or to help you get your next role, this is the series for you. You might be asking yourself, who is this person again, and why should I be listening to him when it comes to storytelling? It's a fair point. I am not a member of the National Storytelling Network, link below. I'm also not a member of any of the storytelling guilds, link below. My finest storytelling is probably at night when I read my daughter Dr. Seuss books and I get the rhythm just right. If you know, you know, but I'll tell you this. I've invested significant time throughout my whole career to become a better storyteller. And some people think I'm okay. There's nothing I'd love more to pass on some of the knowledge to you so you can become better storytellers too. And that's what this is all about. I'll be uploading at least 1 video a week, so I recommend you subscribe if you want updates on the upcoming storytelling series. Also, in case you're not aware they exist, I'm adding timestamps to all of my videos so you can skip and pick the parts you want to watch based on the timestamps. They're all in the description below. It's really convenient if you want to skip to a certain part, a certain concept, whatever interests you the most. And please let me know if you have any comments or questions or topics you'd like me to discuss in upcoming videos. Alrighty then, so I'm just going to warn you right now, if you only want to watch the practical stuff, then this particular video probably isn't for you. But if you'd like to listen to the oldest fiction story ever recorded and how it ties to one of the most important storytelling frameworks in history, keep on watching. Quick warning, the story I'm about to jump into includes a brief mention of rape. We're going to go back more than 4,000 years now to the earliest surviving story in history, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Our hero in this story, he's more of an anti-hero. He's a terrible person, really. He's a terrible king. He's a serial rapist, among other things. His job, I guess, is the king of Uruk. Gilgamesh was 2/3 god and 1/3 man, just like I'm 2/3 man and 1/3 pizza. But the important point here is that Gilgamesh is still a mortal, and that bothered him. Big time. To try and escape his mortality, his hobbies included building projects with forced labor, oppressing people, and raping the wives of his subjects. His subjects, in turn, prayed to the gods that they would do something, and the gods decided to do something. They sent him a friend, Enkidu. By the way, some people try this with their puppy, and they will bring another puppy home to be the first puppy's friend. I recommend against that. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu meet for the first time, they do the typical kind of silly bro-y stuff and they decide to wrestle for some reason, and when they're done wrestling, I think Gilgamesh won that, they need to figure out like, well, what do we do next? So Gilgamesh says, well, why don't we fight a demon adversary? Which is, you know, makes sense. Now, you have to guess what the demon adversary was called if you don't know the story already. Come on. Dracula, Diabolos, Loki, Behemoth. You were close. Humbaba. Yep, the demon's name was Humbaba. Terrifying. I know. Anyway, they load up on some special weapons to kill this demon. It wasn't as easy to do that back then as it is today. These days you can just buy like an AR-15 at Walmart. They couldn't do that. I'm not quite sure what these special weapons were that they got, but anyway, they got some special weapons. Before they leave, Enkidu tries to convince Gilgamesh this is a bad idea, that even with whatever these special weapons were, this demon, Humbaba, is gonna get them, and they had better not go on this crazy journey. At this point, Gilgamesh does what I would probably do as well, and he runs to his mummy. And his mother tells him that she's not particularly pleased about him and this person Enkidu going on this journey to kill a demon, but she gives them her blessing anyway. Enkidu then tries again to convince Gilgamesh not to go on this dangerous quest. Maybe they can just play poker or something. But Gilgamesh is adamant. Gilgamesh and Enkidu venture into a dark, spooky forest. As you can imagine, demons like to make dramatic entrances. So when Humbaba appeared, the earth shook and the forest became even darker than it was before. Da da da! Humbaba appears. His name is hilarious, but his looks are not. This demon is huge, and depending on the version of the story, he either had a lion's head or vulture's feet or a snake's tail or some sort of combination of those things, definitely high on the terrifying scale. Apparently, Gilgamesh and his bud Enkidu try to use these special weapons to no avail. So they get help from another god, Shamash, which, by the way, is the god of the sun and the reason why in Hebrew the word for sun is Shemesh. Shamash takes care of Humbaba, they kill him, they take his head, I think apparently, and sail back home, probably drinking some beers and having a merry time. When they get home, Gilgamesh has a nice long bath. I'm more of a shower person, but whatever. And he puts on beautiful robes. Why beautiful robes? Because apparently he's going to meet Ishtar, a beautiful goddess. She's pretty explicit about what she wants from him. I'm not really comfortable saying it on YouTube, but I think you get the point. For some unknown reason, Gilgamesh refuses her advances and Ishtar sends a bull to kill him. But somehow, Gilgamesh is able to kill the bull instead. At that point, Enkidu slaps Ishtar for trying to kill his friend, and Ishtar in turn, who again is a goddess, curses him, which leads to him dying a painful and long death. So anyway, shit just got real, folks. At this point, Gilgamesh goes into a bit of an existential crisis, and he decides to roam the land in search of meaning. Gilgamesh sets off into the wilderness, determined to find Utnapishtim, who's the Mesopotamian equivalent of Noah, you know, the dude with the ark. After the flood, the gods granted Utnapishtim eternal life, and that's something Gilgamesh is also very interested in, just like tech founders are interested in cryogenics. To get there, Gilgamesh has to walk through 10 leagues of darkness. And he meets another goddess named Siduri, who tells him that to meet Utnapishtim, he has to cross fatal waters with a boatman named Urshanabi. Now, those of you who know me know that at this point I would give up because I don't do boats. Period. Gilgamesh finds Urshanabi and greets him how you'd expect Gilgamesh to treat someone, by bashing him on the head. Anyway, a bunch of crazy shit goes down while Gilgamesh is trying to cross these lethal waters, but he ultimately succeeds and he meets with Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim ends up sharing his inspirational story with Gilgamesh, the one some of us know as the story of Noah. Again, this is what gave Utnapishtim immortality, and this is something that Gilgamesh is very, very interested in. This is his whole quest. So Gilgamesh is all like, what do I have to do? Is there a sign-up sheet? Is there some cryogenic lab where I can freeze my body so it can be thawed later on in the future so I can live an eternal life? And Utnapishtim is all like, no, you're not Elon Musk. What you have to do is one simple task. To gain immortality, all you have to do is stay awake for a week. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, Gilgamesh thinks. But it turns out that all of the adventures he had been through so far, well, it makes someone tired. So the second he sat down on a rock, he fell asleep. Utnapishtim decides to give Gilgamesh a second chance and tells him that if he wants immortality, he has to go find a plant, some sort of magical plant. This is starting to sound more and more like a classic Silicon Valley story the more I think about it. The next part is a bit fuzzy to me, but basically Gilgamesh finds this magical rejuvenation plant by diving deep into the sea or something like that, and then he comes back up and he realizes he has to go back home because his mommy wants him to get back home in time for dinner. But apparently, among other things, Gilgamesh is a super hygienic dude, and he decides to take another bath on his way back home, which turns out to be a terrible mistake, because this snake slithers up behind him, steals the plant, and runs away. Well, not runs away, but slithers away, I guess. And the plant is gone forever. So, of course, Gilgamesh finishes his bath, he notices the plant is gone, and he cries like a baby. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, his kingdom, and he's a little bit bummed, I suppose, that he didn't find his mortality, but he reconciles with that fact, and he realizes that even though he will at some point die, humanity as a whole will not, and that's okay with him. If you want to check out a bunch of resources on this classic tale, hear more versions, or read some articles about it, I've included a few links below. So, what did you think? I think that the Epic of Gilgamesh is pretty epic. It's a good story. I hope I didn't ruin it. But to understand what makes it a good story, and to understand some of the techniques you can use to make your stories great, we have to fast forward quite a bit from more than 4,000 years ago to just a few decades ago, to 1949. That's when Joseph Campbell published The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Campbell was an American professor of literature at Sarah Lawrence College, and he worked in comparative mythology and comparative religion. His work covered many aspects of the human experience, but he's most well known for this book, in which he covers the hero's journey. You might have heard of the hero's journey. In case you haven't, the essence of it is that a hero embarks on a journey away from the safety of their home to adventures far and wide before returning home back again. Now, perhaps we've hit the point in the video where you're starting to wonder whether it was a good idea or not to subscribe to my channel, and I can't blame you for that. What does this hero's journey have to do with tech, with UX research, with storytelling? Who is the hero? In our case, the hero is your users. Your users are the heroes. You're building something for your users because they're struggling. And as they strive to find meaning and find their place, you're there to help. And yeah, I get it. This seems maybe a bit dramatic, a bit over the top, but stories work. Humans have evolved to be creators and consumers of stories. You'll see throughout this series how components of the hero's journey and other principles we'll talk about can help you craft better UX stories, better UX narratives. Now, we won't dive too deep into it today, but the hero's journey has 3 parts: the departure, the initiation, and the return. Suffice to say that every journey begins with a call to adventure, and at some point our hero crosses a threshold, venturing into the belly of the whale to face a road of trials. The hero then goes through a bunch of experiences which end up with the ultimate boon. The ultimate boon is essentially the achievement of the goal of that quest. But the story doesn't usually end there, because the hero might not want to go back to the ordinary world and may need some help to get there. Finally, the hero attains the freedom to live, a comfort in what they have and who they are. Is any of this ringing a bell right now? The Epic of Gilgamesh has all of the characteristics, all of the stages of the hero's journey. For example, the call to adventure is the epic battle with Humbaba. Venturing into the dark forest, that's crossing the threshold. The road of trials is the part where Gilgamesh has to stay awake for a week and ends up falling asleep very quickly. The rejuvenation powers he seeks, that's the ultimate boon. And the freedom to live in this case is all about Gilgamesh coming to terms with his mortality. So here's the thing, y'all. Our brains are pretty much the same as they were when humans first walked this earth. We are wired for stories, and few skills are more important or more valuable than storytelling. So for the rest of part 1, we're going to dive deep into the art and the science of everything that makes stories so integral to the human experience. This is the foundation we need to craft incredible stories. In part 2, we'll transition specifically to research stories. Again, What does it take to craft crisp and compelling stories driven by data and by insights? These are research stories that your stakeholders will be captivated by, that will impact them, that will leave them thinking about your insights and all of the hard work you've done. And in part 3, we're going to talk about career stories, because one of the most important stories you're ever going to tell is your own. And then again, to wrap things up, I'm going to have a really fun interview with a storytelling expert in Silicon Valley. It's going to be really valuable, I hope. I can't wait to tell you more. I hope you're excited. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Like or dislike this video. I hope you subscribe for further updates. There is a lot more to come, and we're going to dive into a lot of the practical details and tips that can help you make your storytelling better. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to the stories. Goodbye for now.